My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review for The Batman. And if you know me, you know that I love Batman. He's my favorite superhero ever. You've got some amazing movies with The Dark Knight, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Returns, Batman 1989, Batman Begins, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and Part 2, Batman Under the Red Hood, and you know what? I'm even the one person on the planet who enjoys Batman and Robin. That movie is campy fun and I enjoy it. I also love Matt Reeves as a director. I loved Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I really liked War for the Planet of the Apes. I love Let Me In, Cloverfield. So you've got Matt Reeves, Batman. I was super excited for this movie. It was one of my most anticipated movies of 2022. And it breaks my heart to say this, but I have to be completely honest, and this movie let me down. This movie was a huge disappointment to me. But let's talk about what I did like about this movie, and let's begin with the fact that this is really the first time that I feel like we get to see the detective angle of the Batman as a character. We got him going to crime scenes, trying to figure things out. We got him looking over dusty old files, and that was an element of this movie that I really loved. And I wish we get more of that in future Batman movies because that is a key aspect of who he is as a character. This might be the best looking superhero movie ever made. And I don't say that lightly, but just everything Matt Reeves brings to this movie visually is absolutely outstanding. Greg Fraser, I believe, is the name of the cinematographer behind this movie, and just what he brings to it is just top-notch work. I love how this movie's almost always taking place at night when it's raining, and so because of that, it's just oozing with atmosphere throughout, and the sound design in this movie is also phenomenal. Like there's one scene where he gets into the Batmobile and he starts it up, and just the sound of it, just perfection. I also love the score by Michael Giacchino. I really like Michael Giacchino as a composer. I think he's done some amazing work with Ratatouille, Up, and Super 8. But in the past decade, he's not delivering on a consistent level. His MCU work is very underwhelming to me. So I'm just happy to say that this might be not just his best work in the past decade, but maybe some of his best work ever. Because wow, what a musical score. It sounds slightly like the 90s Batman cartoon while still sounding like its own thing entirely, and just the usage of it throughout and the way it builds. Oh, it's so good, and I love how he gave each character their own theme. That was one element of the movie that I really loved. Robert Pattinson, I do like as an actor. I think he was great in Good Time and what's it called? The Lighthouse. I think he's great in those two movies, and he's good here. He definitely has that threatening presence as Batman, and I think he nails the Bat voice a lot. How is he as Bruce Wayne? Well, I'll get to that a bit more in a bit, but he's fine for the 2 minutes he exists in the movie as Bruce Wayne. Jeffrey Wright plays Gordon, and this might be my favorite live action version of Gordon we've gotten yet. He just feels more fleshed out as a character, and to see him and Batman actually work as partners was one aspect I feel like we haven't seen on this level before, and I really enjoyed that. You've also got Colin Farrell as Penguin, and even though I know it's Colin Farrell, I just couldn't see it. Like, the makeup work behind him is absolutely phenomenal stuff. And just what Colin Farrell brings to that character, I loved. He's just having the time of his life, and you can tell some of the jokes he makes, some of just the way he talks and presents himself. I saw Colin Farrell really elevated that character. You've also got Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Andy Serkis, and John Turturro, who I did enjoy in the movie, considering they can only work with what they're given. And I didn't like the first 5 minutes of this movie, but the 15 minutes following that, introducing Batman as a character, I really loved. And there's just so many unique aspects to this version of Batman that I really dug. Like, he records every night that he's out on the streets, and he watches the night over again and takes notes. And I love that. And I wish that was an aspect of the movie that was played up a bit more, where he could go back to some of his old clips, his old notes, and just trying to figure out what he missed before. Because it introduced that, but they did nothing with it. I also love this version of the Batmobile. I love his bat suit, but the character work behind Batman himself is beyond underwhelming. I get what they're going for. He's a symbol of vengeance to a symbol of hope by the end. I get it. It just doesn't work for me on any level. I don't feel like what he goes through within this movie really challenges him to his core to the point where he can change who he is. And a big part of that is that Bruce Wayne as a character isn't even remotely developed. Now, I've already seen the defenses of this. Oh, it's because he's Batman. That's his only character trait. No, I'm sorry. You've got to develop Bruce Wayne to a certain degree. I'm not saying it has to be the Bruce Wayne that goes out to parties and puts on that playboy persona, but there has to be some human grounded element for me to latch onto. Because he's just Batman, and you don't connect with Batman, you connect with Bruce Wayne. Batman being the real face of Bruce Wayne isn't a new concept. It was explored in a much more interesting way in Batman Returns. Like there's one scene early on where Alfred's just like to Bruce, okay Bruce, because you won't go to Wayne Enterprises, they'll come in here for a meeting. And I'm just like, okay, let's see what his day-to-day life is about. And we don't even see the meeting. And it's just like you have no clue who this Bruce Wayne is. So much of this movie is reliant on you having some sort of connection to Bruce Wayne and his past. But this movie is also just like, well, people know the story of Batman, so we're just going to scratch that entirely. And that's lazy. You can go about familiar aspects of the story of Bruce Wayne, but find a way to make it feel new. Especially when so much of the story is dependent on it. That's as much as I can go into without spoiling anything. But Batman Bruce Wayne as a character, I don't know if I've ever cared less about him. Which is really disappointing to me as someone who loves the character. None of that is on Robert Pattinson, it's on the writing of the character himself. And like I said, Zoe Kravitz is fine in this movie for what she needed to do, but I've thought about it, and Catwoman as a character is completely unnecessary. She doesn't add all that much to this movie at all, and we already got enough of the partnership element with Batman and Gordon that I don't think we needed it with Catwoman too. And that said, the romance between Batman and Catwoman, you don't buy for a second. It feels very forced. Then you've got the Riddler, and he's introduced in a way that they're trying to make him feel like a horror villain. And none of the horror elements behind this character were effective for me at all. Like the very first scene, he's standing behind this guy for like what feels like 3 minutes. And at a certain point, I'm just like, how does this guy not see him? And I just didn't find it to be creepy. And I feel like they were going for that and they failed. And I also didn't really like this character because we don't really see him in person all that much. We just see him through video and footage. I just wish we saw him in person a bit more. I'm not saying the video footage stuff couldn't have been pulled off, but I don't think the execution was there. Like you look at a movie like Zodiac, and any time someone gets a phone call in that movie from Zodiac, it's tense, you get chills all over your body, and Riddler doesn't bring that same presence to him. And also, the more we find out about Riddler and what he's trying to accomplish here, the more that you understand him as a character, and I feel like they just threw that all away in the last act to make him more of a cliche villain, and what ends up being his ultimate plot, the threat to the city, came out of left field entirely for me and did not work on any level. I'm someone who thinks that they've really nailed the casting of Alfred almost every single time. I love Michael Gore and his relationship with Bruce in those movies. I think Michael Caine was great in the Dark Knight trilogy. And I think Jeremy Irons was such a great Alfred, and I'm really bummed out he's done in the role. Andy Serkis, I think, could have done a really great job as Alfred, but this is also the least work they've ever given him. He has nothing to do in this movie. I never cared about him as a character, and I never cared about his relationship with Bruce Wayne because it felt hardly existent at all. So, Andy Serkis could have been a great Alfred, but he's given nothing to do. The story in this movie I thought was a complete overstuffed mess. It has way too much going on, and after an eventual point, it loses focus entirely. Like, the middle hour of this movie we hardly see Riddler at all. And it kind of goes in these different directions that none of them really work for me at all. That entire middle hour of the movie just kills any sort of pacing this movie had, and it really didn't work for me. And then lots of the plot points in this movie I thought were really predictable and obvious. Like, you've got this plot going on involving corrupt cops and mobs, and just the direction this story takes, I saw coming from even before I saw this movie. So, that's all I'll say, but it didn't work for me at all. This movie also has that problem where it feels like it was supposed to end like 45 minutes before it did, but it just keeps going on. Like, there's a point where Batman's like, this isn't over yet. And I'm just like, oh, really? And it keeps going on. And then you're just like, okay, now this is going to be the ending. Nope, now this is going to be the ending. Nope, okay, well, this is going to be the ending. And I know people always call that the Return of the King problem, but I don't have that issue with Return of the King because it owns each and every one of those endings. While this movie doesn't, and it just feels like it's way too long. And I also thought one element of the movie that was legitimately awful in moments was the dialogue. The way that some people talked in this movie wasn't realistic at all, and it was just obvious exposition. Like, early on, they're at a crime scene, Batman, Gordon, and this commissioner, and the commissioner's just like to Gordon, Gordon, what are you doing working with him? You were my partner years ago before I became commissioner, and I'm just like, wow, that was really bad. And then later on, Catwoman's trying to get answers from this one person, and he just tells her everything that she needs to know. And it's just like so much of the dialogue is exposition heavy and you don't buy it for a single second. I do have a few more issues with this movie. The first one is that I get that it's Batman's second year doing this and they're trying to show that he's not perfect at it yet. But I felt like his level of competency was very inconsistent throughout. Like, for the most part in the movie, whenever he needs to fight people, he's absolutely flawless at it. He does it perfect. But then they're like, well, we need to show that this is his second year a bit more. So then there's moments where like they kind of dumb him down or just have him mess up to the point where it feels really out of character. And instead of it being like, do, and then do, it should have just been like, do. Like, he's good at his job, but just have some sort of consistency throughout. And going off of that, there were some moments where the characters behaved in a really stupid fashion. Like, there's one moment where Batman is near this bomb, and it's ticking down, and you're just like, okay, it's in the last few seconds, get out of there. But he doesn't, he just lets it blow up right next to him, like he could have easily died, and just moments of complete stupidity took me out of it. And my last complaint is that this movie was clearly inspired by Zodiac and Seven, and they should have gone all the way there. The fact that this movie is PG-13, I do think harms it. I'm not the guy who's just like, oh, every movie needs to be R-rated. But this R-rating would have gone perfectly with the atmosphere that this movie has established. You've already got these people getting killed in very brutal ways. Why not go all the way there? And I think it would have really added something to this movie. I think this movie needed a bit more brutality. But yeah, actually, I said that was my last complaint, but I have one more, and it's a big one, actually. Because one thing I like asking myself after watching a movie is to ask, what was that movie about? Last of Us 2, I know it's a video game, but it's about love and loss. Arcane Season 1, I know it's a TV show, but it's about the duality of life. Batman Returns is about outsiders looking for their place within this world. There's always got to be a central idea, a theme that just connects everything in the movie together. And this movie was lacking in one. The best movies are the ones where everything fits into this tight circle where the themes, the characters, and the story all work together. In this movie, it's just missing that central theme. What is it that you want to explore? Because I do think there's potential for certain ideas to be explored, but I don't think they do get explored. So what's this movie about? About finding hope? I don't buy it because that's only present in the last act of this movie. So what's it about? and I can't think of an answer when it comes to this movie. This movie is also severely lacking in any emotion. Like I said, this movie is incredibly well made from a visual standpoint. The atmosphere, the visuals are just absolutely top-notch, phenomenal, beautiful stuff. The sound in the musical score, fantastic. Love it. The performances did the best with what they were given, but what they were given was not good. This movie has a lot of plot, a lot of things going on, but there's very little story and character work, and that's the stuff I like in movies. I like the fact that they played out the detective angle, but just the way that story plays out wasn't satisfying to me. And the more I think about this movie, the less I like it. I think there's lots of good elements here. You could have set up certain key story beats early on and really dive into the character of Bruce Wayne. But they didn't, and I just feel like what we get here is a disappointment, and I'm not happy to say that. So I'm gonna go ahead and give The Batman a 4 out of 10. Before I wrap up, I do want to say this one thing, because I'm seeing people attack other people online for not liking this movie, that no, they're just being a contrarian for the sake of it. And I can assure you that's not the case here. Opinions are subjective. You know, the fact that people are just like, no, they're just being a contrarian. This is objectively a good movie. I hate that shit. If everyone just agreed with everyone for every single movie, you wouldn't have interesting conversations. And to just disregard people's opinions like that, I think is a real asshole move. So if you're gonna be a dick, fuck off. Because I don't put up with that shit. So yes, just wanted to say that because people are just like, this is a masterpiece. This is the best Batman movie ever. Like they haven't been praising The Dark Knight to no ends for the past 14 years. It's just ridiculous how this instantly became everyone's favorite movie ever. And it can be your favorite movie ever, but don't go ahead and be attacking people for not liking it. So, yes, that is my message. Anyways, have you seen The Batman? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.